The sun rose gently over the quiet village of Makand, painting the sky in soft colors of gold and orange. Birds sang on the rooftops, and the smell of cooking fires filled the morning air. Life in Makand moved slowly, peacefully, and the people lived with laughter and strong hearts. In the center of this village stood the home of Chief Baraka, a man respected by all. His wisdom was known in every corner of the land. People came to him for advice about crops, disputes, and even matters of the heart. Chief Baraka was an old man with kind eyes and a soft voice that carried calm wherever he spoke. Though his beard had turned white and his steps were slow, his mind was sharp like a spear. He had led his people through many seasons of drought and plenty. But now his greatest worry was not the land, nor the village, but his only son Temba. Temba was the pride of Makand. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with strong arms and a confident smile. From childhood, he had been quick to learn and brave in spirit. When he walked through the village, people often turned to look. Women whispered his name, admiring his beauty and grace. Men respected him for his strength and education. He had studied in the city and returned home with new clothes, fine shoes, and big dreams. But one thing was missing: Temba refused to marry. Many young women admired him and dreamed of being his wife. Some even visited Chief Baraka's home, bringing baskets of fruit or fresh bread, hoping to win his favor. But Temba was not moved. Whenever his father spoke of marriage, he would laugh and shake his head. "Love is for those with time to waste," he often said. "A man should build wealth first. A man should lead, not chase feelings." Chief Baraka listened patiently each time, but his heart grew heavier. He knew the world better than his son did. He had seen proud men grow old and lonely. He had seen rich men with empty hearts. He feared that his son's pride would steal his happiness. At night, when the house was silent, the old man would sit by the fire and whisper to himself, "Pride is a shadow that hides the truth of life." One evening, as the stars began to appear, Baraka called Temba to sit beside him. The air was cool and the sound of drums echoed from the nearby hills. "My son," the old man began gently, "you have all that a man could want: health, strength, knowledge, and respect. But you walk alone. Have you never thought of a woman to share your days with?" Temba smiled, pouring himself a cup of water. "Father, I do not need anyone to share my days. I am young and have dreams to follow. Marriage is a trap for those who have nothing better to do." Baraka looked at him carefully. "A trap? My son, love is not a trap. It is a gift. A man may build houses and own cattle, but what good is all that if he comes home to silence?" Temba's face hardened. "I do not want someone who will love me for my name or my wealth. I have seen how people change when they see power. Let me live as I am." The old chief sighed deeply. He understood his son's fear, but he also knew it came from pride. "My son," he said, "when I was your age I thought like you. I believed strength was enough. But the truth is, strength fades. A man's name will be forgotten if he has no one to carry it forward. Your mother once told me, love does not make a man weak, it gives him reason to rise each morning." Temba stayed silent. He looked into the fire, watching the wood crack and fall into ash. For a moment, doubt crossed his face, but pride quickly covered it. "Father," he said firmly, "perhaps one day I will find a woman worth my heart. But not now." The next morning, Chief Baraka went to the market. As he passed through the village, women greeted him warmly. Some whispered to each other about Temba. "The chief's son still walks alone," one said. "He is proud like a lion that forgets the value of the herd." Baraka smiled politely, but inside he felt pain. He knew that love could not be forced. It had to be found, yet he feared his son's heart had closed itself to the world. That night, the chief sat again by the fire. The moon was bright above the trees, and the crickets sang softly in the grass. He thought about his son's words about pride and love. He remembered the early days when he himself was young and full of dreams. He remembered how his late wife, Mama Lela, had softened his anger with her laughter. He whispered to the night, "If only Temba could see love the way I once did." The days turned to weeks and Temba continued to live as he pleased. He trained with young men in the village, hunted in the forest, and worked on new ideas for farming and trade. Everyone admired his energy, but few could get close to him. When people spoke kindly to him, he thought they wanted something. When women smiled, he turned away. His heart was locked like a chest with no key. One afternoon, as he returned from the fields, he found his father sitting alone under the baobab tree. The chief looked tired, his eyes heavy with thought. "You work hard, my son," he said softly. "But I see no joy in your eyes." Temba shrugged. "Work gives me strength, father. Joy is for children." Baraka smiled sadly. You think joy is weakness, but joy is the sign of life. Without it, even a strong man becomes hollow. That night, Baraka spoke to the ancestors. He prayed for wisdom, asking how he could help his son understand what truly mattered. The wind blew through the trees, whispering softly, and in that moment, an idea began to form in his mind. The next morning, the old man woke early before the sun. He looked around his home one last time and nodded to himself. Perhaps, he thought, if his son could not see the truth through comfort, he might see it through humility. He touched the doorframe gently and whispered, "It is time." As the sun rose above the hills, Chief Baraka walked away from his home, dressed in old clothes, leaving behind his wealth and his title. The people of Makand would soon wonder where he had gone, but he did not look back. His heart carried both sadness and hope. Back at home, Temba woke to find his father missing. He asked the servants, but no one had seen him since dawn. For the first time in his life, Temba felt something unusual, a quiet worry, a hollow ache in his chest. He stepped outside and looked toward the village road, where the dust rose faintly in the distance. Somewhere far ahead, his father walked toward a new beginning, a test that would change both their lives forever. The night was quiet, and the moon shone softly over the village of Makand. Chief Baraka sat alone by the fire, his face calm but his mind full of worry. The flames danced in his eyes as he thought about his son, Temba. He had tried to talk to him many times, but Temba's pride stood taller than the trees. He had everything, a strong body, wisdom, and respect, but his heart was empty. Chief Baraka knew that no words could change his son now. Only life itself could teach him. He looked around the large house built with years of hard work and care. The walls were covered with carvings of his ancestors, and the air carried the smell of burning wood and dried herbs. Yet, all that wealth and peace felt meaningless without seeing his son happy. The chief closed his eyes and whispered, "If my son cannot find love and comfort, perhaps love must find him through humility." That night he made a decision that surprised even himself. He would leave everything behind, his name, his power, and his pride. He would walk among the poor as one of them. Perhaps then he could see the world through their eyes and find someone who had a heart pure enough to love not gold or fame, but goodness itself. Before the dawn came, Baraka rose quietly. He opened his chest of clothes and took out an old, torn shirt he used to wear many years ago. He removed his fine robe, folded it neatly, and placed it on the bed. He smeared dust on his face and arms until his skin looked dry and tired. Then he took a small wooden stick and leaned on it like an old traveler. When he looked at himself in the mirror, even he could barely recognize the proud chief he once was. Without a word to anyone, he stepped outside into the cool morning air. The birds had not yet begun to sing. The path that led away from Makand was quiet, covered in soft fog. He walked slowly, his heart heavy but filled with purpose. Behind him, the grand house stood silent, and the village still slept. After many hours of walking, he reached Inyona, a small village by the river. The place was lively but poor. The market stood in the center, full of noise and smells, smoke from roasted maize, the sound of women calling out prices, and the laughter of children chasing one another. Baraka sat near the edge of the market, close to a tree that gave him shade. He placed an empty calabash bowl in front of him and lowered his head, pretending to be a tired old beggar. At first, people passed by without seeing him. Some looked but said nothing. Others frowned and whispered among themselves. One man laughed and said, "Look at this old one pretending to be weak. He should be working instead of begging." Baraka said nothing. He kept his head down, observing. Every word, every action showed him the heart of the people. As the days went by, he saw how different people treated those who had nothing. Some were kind, offering him a little water or leftover food. Some turned away in disgust. Others mocked him just to feel powerful. He listened, he watched, and in every gesture he saw the truth about the world. Every night, when the market closed, he would walk to the edge of the river and wash his face. He would look up at the stars and whisper, "Let me find the one who can see beyond appearances." Weeks passed and the chief grew thinner. He had eaten little, slept on the ground, and lived with the poor. Yet, his heart felt strangely peaceful. Away from his fine home and servants, he found silence and clarity. The wind carried the voices of the night, soft, patient, and honest. One afternoon, a group of boys ran past him, laughing and pointing. "Old man," one of them said, "you are still sitting there? No one will give you food today." Baraka smiled weakly. "Maybe not," he said softly, "but I am still thankful for the day." The boys stared at him for a moment, surprised by his calmness, then ran off again. Not far from where he sat, A young woman named Ao ran a small stall selling roasted maize. Every day she saw the old man sitting under the same tree, quiet and patient. Unlike others, she never mocked him. She felt something gentle in the way he looked at the world. He never begged loudly or chased people for coins. He simply sat with quiet dignity. That evening, when she was closing her stall, she noticed him still sitting there, his hands trembling slightly. Without thinking twice, she picked up 2 pieces of roasted maize and walked toward him. "Here, Baba," she said softly, placing them in his bowl. Baraka looked up slowly. His eyes met hers, warm, kind eyes full of light. "Thank you, my daughter," he said, his voice tired but sincere. "You do not have to thank me," she replied with a smile. "Kindness should not wait for payment." Her words touched something deep inside the old man. For many days he had seen greed, pride, and coldness. But here, in a simple young woman, he found warmth. She was not rich, her clothes were simple and her hands rough from work. Yet her heart shone brighter than gold. The next day, Ao came again and greeted him with a smile. "Did you eat well, Baba?" she asked. He nodded and thanked her. She gave him a small cup of porridge. Every morning she brought him something small, a bit of food, a little water, or sometimes just a kind word. As the days turned into weeks, Baraka began to notice how she treated everyone around her. When other sellers quarreled over customers, she would calm them with gentle words. When a child cried, she would share her food. When the market was empty, she would sit quietly watching the sunset, her eyes full of peace. Each day, Baraka thanked the spirits for guiding him to this place. He had found what he came looking for, not wealth, not beauty, but true kindness. He realized that love lived not in the grand homes of the rich but in the hearts of those who gave even when they had little. Still, he kept his disguise. He wanted to be sure that what he saw was real. One afternoon he decided to test her heart. He approached her stall and said, "My daughter, I am hungry, but today I have nothing to give. Will you still share your food with me?" Ao smiled and nodded. "Baba, I did not feed you because you could pay me. I did it because we are all the same under the sun." Those simple words struck the old man deeply. He almost forgot to act like a beggar. His throat tightened and tears filled his eyes. He looked away, afraid she might see the truth. That night he went to the river again. The stars were bright above him. He knelt and whispered to the heavens, "I have found her, the one whose heart is pure. But how shall I bring her to my son?" He smiled to himself, feeling hope rise within him for the first time in years. His plan had worked better than he expected. Soon, he would return home and bring his son to meet the woman whose kindness shone brighter than gold. As the wind brushed gently across the river, Chief Baraka sat quietly, his heart full of peace. He knew the journey was not yet over, but he also knew the path of love had begun to open before him. The days in Inyona village moved slowly, each one the same as the one before. The sun rose early, the market filled with noise, and by evening the people went home tired but content. Chief Baraka, still disguised as a beggar, sat quietly under the big mango tree near the edge of the market. His clothes were old, his face covered in dust, and his hands trembled slightly as he held his small wooden bowl. Most people had grown used to seeing him there. They no longer looked at him with curiosity. Some ignored him as if he were invisible. A few children threw stones or laughed as they ran by. The old man said nothing. He only smiled weakly and watched them. He had seen pride, selfishness, and greed, but also patience and faith among those who struggled each day. Yet, he had not yet found what he was looking for, a heart that cared without reason. One hot morning, as the sun burned high above the roofs, a soft voice broke the noise of the market. "Baba, would you like some water?" Baraka looked up slowly. Standing before him was a young woman with dark skin and kind eyes. She held a small gourd filled with cool water. Her name was Ao. She was known in the market for selling roasted maize, her stall filled with the smell of smoke and fresh corn. Her hair was tied neatly in a scarf, and though her clothes were simple, she carried herself with quiet pride. Baraka blinked, unsure at first if she was speaking to him. Many days had passed without a kind word. He nodded and said softly, "Thank you, my daughter." She smiled, kneeling beside him as she handed him the water. "It is a hot day. No one should be thirsty." He drank slowly, the coolness easing his dry throat. "You are kind," he said. "Most people walk past me as if I am not here." Ao laughed gently. "Baba, kindness costs nothing. My mother used to say, a kind heart feeds the spirit better than food." Her words touched the old man deeply. For the first time since he left Makand, he felt warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. He watched her return to her stall, greeting people with a bright smile, chatting with children and offering fair prices to everyone. The next morning she came again. "Baba, have you eaten?" she asked. When he shook his head, she placed 2 roasted maize cobs in his bowl. "You must eat before the day grows long," she said cheerfully. "Thank you, my daughter," he said again, his eyes soft. "You do not need to thank me every time," she said with a laugh. "Kindness is the food of the spirit, Baba." From that day, Ao made it her habit to bring him food or water. Sometimes it was maize, sometimes a small piece of bread, sometimes just a smile. She never asked who he was or where he came from. To her, he was simply an old man who needed care. Baraka began to watch her more closely, not out of suspicion but with admiration. He saw how she treated her customers. She never cheated anyone, not even when she could have gained more money. When a child dropped his maize into the dirt, she gave him another one for free. When an old woman had no coins, Ao said, "Take this one, Mama. Pay me when you can." Her kindness was quiet but strong. It was not something she used to impress people, it was simply who she was. The market women loved her, and even the roughest traders respected her. One afternoon, heavy rain fell suddenly. People ran for shelter, covering their goods with cloths and baskets. The market turned into chaos. Baraka, sitting by his tree, was quickly soaked. He tried to move, but his old bones ached and his stick slipped in the mud. Through the storm he heard Ao's voice. "Baba, come this way." She ran toward him, holding a small mat over her head. She took his hand and helped him to her stall, where she had made a dry corner. "Sit here," she said, shaking the rain from her scarf. "You will catch cold out there." Baraka smiled, his heart warmed despite the chill. "You will get wet because of me." She shrugged, laughing softly. "Rain touches everyone, Baba. But kindness keeps us warm." They sat together in silence as the rain poured down. Baraka looked at her closely and thought of his son. He imagined Temba sitting here, speaking with this young woman. Would he see her goodness? Would he understand what true beauty was? The thought gave him hope. When the rain stopped, Ao helped him back to his spot under the tree. Before she left, she said, "Tomorrow I will bring you something hot to eat. My mother's soup is good for strong bones." The next morning she returned with a small bowl of soup made from beans and vegetables. It smelled wonderful, and Baraka could not remember the last time he had eaten something so kind. He ate slowly, each spoonful tasting of care and simplicity. As the days went on, people began to notice Ao's small acts of kindness. Some laughed and told her she was wasting her time on an old beggar. "He cannot repay you," they said. Ao only smiled and answered, "Not all gifts need to be repaid. The world becomes brighter when we share light." Those words reached Baraka's ears, and his heart filled with emotion. He had met many rich people in his life, people who could give gold, food, or land, but none who could give love so easily. One evening, when the market grew quiet and the sun dipped low, Ao came to sit with him. She was tired from the long day, her hands black with ash from the roasting fire. "Baba," she said softly, "you always sit here so quietly. Do you have family?" Baraka looked down at his hands. "Once I did," he said truthfully. "I have a son. He is a good man, but his heart has not yet learned what kindness truly means." Ao nodded, looking thoughtful. "Sometimes people forget that love is not found in riches. Love is found in how we treat those who cannot repay us." Her words were like music to Baraka's ears. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was not truly a beggar, that he was a chief searching for a woman worthy of his son, but he stayed silent. He knew the time would come. That night, when the market closed, Baraka walked to the river again. The sky was full of stars and the water glimmered under the moonlight. He knelt by the shore and whispered, "Thank you, ancestors. You have shown me the heart I was searching for." He thought of Ao's laughter, her patience, her words. He saw in her everything he wished for his son, a gentle strength, a soul untouched by greed, a love that gave without asking. For the first time in a long while, the old man felt at peace. His plan was beginning to take shape. He would return home soon. But before that, he would make sure his heart truly understood what he had found. The next day, when Ao handed him his usual maize, Baraka smiled warmly. "My daughter," he said, "your kindness will one day open doors you do not even see yet." She laughed. "Then I will walk through them when the time comes." As she walked away, her laughter filled the market like music, and Baraka sat quietly under the mango tree, smiling to himself. He had come in search of a woman who could love without seeing wealth, and in Ao, he had found a heart brighter than any jewel he could ever give. When the days in Inyona grew cooler and the winds began to change, Chief Baraka knew it was time to return home. He had found what he came searching for, a woman with a kind heart and a pure soul. His old body ached from sleeping on the ground and his feet were tired from walking barefoot, but his spirit was full of peace. He looked one last time at the market where Ao sold her roasted maize, her laughter echoing through the air like music. He smiled softly and whispered, "You do not know it yet, my daughter, but your kindness will soon change another heart." He walked back to Makan slowly, leaning on his stick. When he reached home, his servants were shocked to see him. They had thought he was lost or taken by spirits. They rushed to help him, but Baraka waved them away. He wanted to see his son first. When Temba entered the courtyard and saw his father covered in dust, his eyes widened. "Father, where have you been?" he asked in surprise. "I searched for you everywhere. What happened to you?" Baraka smiled, his face calm. "I have been on a journey, my son. I needed to learn something that comfort could not teach me. Sit down, Temba. I have a story for you." Temba sat beside him, listening as his father spoke. Baraka told him everything, how he had disguised himself as a beggar and gone to live among the poor. He told him about the market, the people he met, and how he had seen both cruelty and compassion. Then his voice softened. "Among all the faces I saw, one shined brighter than the rest, a young woman named Ao. She sells roasted maize, but her heart is made of gold. When the world turned its face from me, she gave me food and water. When rain fell, she shared her shelter. She never asked who I was and she never asked for anything in return." Temba frowned. "A market girl, father? You want me to meet a woman who sells maize?" "Yes," Baraka said firmly. "Because sometimes the richest hearts are found among the poor." Temba sighed, crossing his arms. "Father, I respect your wisdom, but I cannot marry a woman like that. She does not belong in our home. What will people say?" Baraka looked at him with patient eyes. "You care too much for what others will say. You have built walls around your heart, my son. If you wish to be truly wise, you must first learn humility. Meet her once. Just once. If you do not see what I see, I will never speak of it again." Temba hesitated. His pride wanted to refuse, but his father's calmness made him curious. Finally he nodded. "Very well, father. I will meet her." The next day Baraka sent word to Ao and Inyona, inviting her to visit Makand. When she arrived, she came on foot, carrying a small basket of roasted maize as a gift. She wore a clean dress, but it was simple and her feet were bare. She did not know that the kind old beggar she had helped was a chief. When Temba saw her for the first time, he was silent. She was not like the women he knew, not dressed in silk or gold, not painted in fine colors. Yet something about her was different. Her eyes were calm, her smile warm, and she stood with quiet confidence. "Welcome," Baraka said kindly. "My son, this is Ao, the young woman I told you about." Ao bowed respectfully. "It is an honor to meet you, Chief Baraka, and you, sir," she said softly, looking at Temba. Temba nodded, unsure what to say. He was used to women who flattered him or tried to impress him. But Ao did neither. She simply smiled and spoke as though they were equals. Baraka invited her to sit and share a meal. As they ate, Ao spoke politely, answering questions about her life in the market, her mother, and her dreams. She told them she wanted to one day open a small shop to help other women earn an honest living. Her words were simple, but her heart showed through every sentence. When she laughed, it was gentle and true. When she spoke, there was wisdom in her voice. Temba found himself listening carefully, forgetting his earlier pride. After she left, Baraka turned to his son. "Well?" he asked quietly. Temba hesitated. She is not what I expected," he said honestly. "She speaks with honesty. There is peace in her eyes." Baraka smiled. "That peace comes from kindness, my son. Kindness that does not come from wealth or learning, but from the soul." In the days that followed, Temba found himself thinking about Ao more than he wanted to admit. He remembered her words, her laughter, the way she looked at his father with respect but not fear. Something about her unsettled him, not because she was poor but because she was real. One morning Baraka asked him to take some food to the market in Inyona. "Ao will be there," he said with a knowing smile. "Perhaps you can thank her for her kindness." Temba agreed, though he told himself it was only to please his father. When he arrived at the market, he saw Ao at her stall, smiling as she served her customers. When she noticed him, her eyes lit up with surprise. "Chief's son," she said cheerfully, "you found your way to the market. What brings you here?" Temba felt awkward but smiled back. "My father asked me to bring you something," he said, handing her a basket of fruit and fresh bread. Ao thanked him, her voice warm. "That is kind of you. But you do not have to bring gifts, sir. You already carry your father's blessing. That is gift enough." He was taken aback by her words. Most people bowed or tried to please him because of who he was. But Ao spoke to him as if he were just another man. They talked for a long while, about the market, the weather, and the small joys of life. Her laughter was light and pure, and Temba found himself laughing too, something he had not done freely in a long time. Over the next few days he returned again and again, each time with a different excuse. Sometimes he brought her fruit, sometimes he helped her carry wood for her stall. The villagers whispered, amused to see the proud son of Chief Baraka spending time with a maize seller. But Temba no longer cared what they said. He watched her kindness not just toward him but toward everyone. When a poor man came with no coins, she gave him food. When a child fell, she helped him up. Her heart seemed to have endless space for others. Each day, Temba's pride began to fade like morning mist. He found himself thinking less about wealth and more about goodness. When he looked at Ao, he saw beauty that no gold could buy. Her simple ways touched something deep within him, something his pride had long hidden. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Temba walked with Ao along the path by the river. The wind was soft, carrying the smell of maize and fresh grass. He turned to her and said quietly, "You have changed the way I see the world, Ao. My father was right about you." Ao smiled gently. "Your father is a wise man. He sees what others overlook." Temba looked into her eyes and felt peace, a feeling he had never known. For the first time in his life, he understood what his father had been trying to teach him. Love was not a weakness. It was strength, gentle, steady, and pure. When Chief Baraka saw them walking together that night, he smiled from afar. His plan had worked. His son's heart was finally opening, not to wealth, not to pride, but to love. The morning sun rose gently over Makand, painting the sky in colors of gold and orange. Birds sang from the tall trees, and the air carried the smell of fresh flowers and roasted maize. The whole village was alive with excitement. Drums were being beaten, women were dancing as they decorated the village square, and children ran around with joy. It was the day everyone had been waiting for, the wedding of Chief Baraka's son, Temba, and the kind market girl Ao. Temba stood by the river, dressed in a fine robe, but his face was calm and thoughtful. He looked at his reflection in the water and remembered who he used to be, proud, cold, and blind to the beauty of kindness. But that man was gone now. In his place stood someone humbler, wiser, and filled with gratitude. Behind him, Chief Baraka approached slowly, leaning on his walking stick, smiling. "My son," he said gently, "you have changed. I see peace in your eyes now." Temba turned to him and nodded with deep respect. "It is because of you, father. You showed me the truth I refused to see. Ao's heart taught me what riches never could." Baraka chuckled softly. "The heart sees what gold cannot. Today the village will not only celebrate your marriage, my son, it will also learn a lesson that will live longer than our years." The sound of drums grew louder as Ao arrived, surrounded by women singing in sweet harmony. She wore a simple white dress made of soft cloth, with beads woven into her hair. She looked like sunlight itself, bright, gentle, and full of grace. When Temba saw her, his heart filled with joy. He could hardly believe that the woman before him was the same one who once sold roasted maize at the dusty market. The ceremony began beneath the big baobab tree, where elders gathered to bless the couple. The people of Makand cheered as Baraka stood before them. He raised his hand and the music quieted. His voice carried through the air, strong but filled with warmth. "My people," he began, "today we celebrate love, not the kind born of wealth or beauty, but the love that grows from kindness and truth." Everyone listened closely, for their chief rarely spoke in such a tone. Baraka looked at his son, then at Ao, and continued, "There is something you all must know. Many months ago, I disguised myself as a poor beggar. I left this home and walked to the village of Inyona. I wanted to see how people treat those who have nothing. I sat at the market, covered in dust, with no food, no name, and no riches." The crowd murmured in surprise. Some gasped, others looked at each other in disbelief. Baraka smiled softly. "I saw people pass me without a glance," he said. "Some laughed at me. Some called me worthless. But one young woman stopped. She did not ask who I was or what I owned. She simply shared her food and her kindness. That woman was Ao." A gentle hush fell over the crowd. Ao's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth. She turned to look at Baraka in astonishment. You were the old beggar at the market?" she whispered. Baraka nodded kindly. "Yes, my child. You did not know me, yet your heart saw me as human. That is the heart I wanted for my son." That is the reason you are here today, because you loved without knowing who I was, without seeing riches or title. The people began to whisper among themselves, amazed by what they had just heard. One elder, shaking his head in awe, said, "Our chief is wise indeed. He has found the one whose heart is pure." Temba stepped forward, his eyes full of emotion. He turned to his father and bowed deeply. "Father, I was blind. You tested me in a way I never understood. I thank you for opening my eyes before it was too late." His voice trembled with sincerity as he continued, "I once thought love was a weakness. But now I see that it is strength, the kind that brings peace to the soul." Then he turned to Ao, his heart full. "Ao, you showed me what true love means. You gave food to a man you thought was poor, and now you have given life to a man who was lost. You saw me not for what I had but for who I could be." Ao's eyes shone with tears, but she smiled softly. "And you, Temba, have learned to see with your heart. That is the richest sight of all." Baraka raised his hands once more. "Let this day remind us all," he said, "that he who seeks love in gold finds emptiness, but he who finds love in kindness finds life." The crowd cheered, clapping and dancing as drums thundered through the air. Children sang songs of joy, and women ululated in celebration. The market vendors brought fruits, maize and roasted meat to share with everyone. Even travelers passing through stopped to watch, drawn by the sound of laughter and music. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the feast began. Fires burned bright in the village square, lighting the faces of the happy crowd. Temba and Ao sat together, surrounded by friends and family. Baraka sat beside them, his heart at peace. He watched his son laugh with his new wife, their faces glowing with happiness. Ao reached over and gently took Baraka's hand. "Baba," she said softly, "I will never forget how you taught us this lesson, that love must be given freely, not bought." Baraka smiled, his old eyes warm with affection. "My daughter, it was you who taught me that lesson first." The drummers began to play faster and people started dancing around the fire. Ao joined them, her laughter echoing through the night. Temba soon followed, his earlier pride now replaced by joy and humility. The villagers cheered, chanting their names in rhythm with the drums. As the stars filled the sky, Baraka looked up and whispered a silent prayer. "Thank you, Great Spirit, for showing my son the beauty of a true heart." He leaned back, his eyes glowing with satisfaction. He had fulfilled his purpose as a father, not by giving his son wealth but by giving him wisdom. That night, the village of Makand glowed brighter than ever before. The people would tell the story of Chief Baraka, Temba, and Ao for generations, a tale of pride turned into humility, and of love that grew not from riches but from kindness. And so, beneath the watchful stars, the old man smiled as laughter filled the air. His heart rested knowing that his son had finally found what he had long been missing, a love that was pure, simple, and true.